Well, Baofeng's at it again. Let's look at a newly released Mini 5 Ham HT. I've mentioned before that part of Baofeng's marketing strategy seems to be making small changes to popular radios to tempt us into making another radio purchase. In this case, they've just released the Mini 5 Ham HT, which is nearly identical to the very popular UV5R Mini. As we'll see in a minute, there are some meaningful differences, and you'll notice both firmware and hardware differences when we look at the radio info menu. Also note, I seem to have it in my head to call this the 5 Mini. I noticed that I did that in some of the following clips. My bad. I'm using the 5 Mini and Mini 5 interchangeably. The two big differences between the UV5R Mini and the Mini 5 are the bigger 2200 milliamp hour battery and some larger buttons on the radio's faceplate for those of us with big hands or who may use our radios outdoors while wearing gloves. Other than that, the menus are the same, and it uses the same UV5R Mini settings in both the factory CPS and in Chirp. Let's change camera views and take a look at what comes in the box. So here's the box that the UV Mini 5 comes in. As you can see, it is labeled as the Mini 5. Sometimes you see it as UV5R Mini 5. So we'll call it the Mini 5 because that's what they've got it labeled. Let's look at what's inside. From a security standpoint, it's got a belt clip that snaps into the back of the radio, and then it's got this ribbon-style lanyard that have become common with Baofeng radios. It snaps apart here, so you don't have the whole thing on the radio all the time, but then when you want to snap it onto the lanyard itself, it just quickly snaps on. The radio is USB-C charging, and it comes with a USB-C charging cable. A on one side, C on the other. There is no wall wart, nor is there a desk charger that comes in this single radio pack, but the charge cable is right here. As with many Baofeng radio, it comes with a wired earphone and push-to-talk. Gives you a little more discreet radio use, or it allows you to wear the radio on your belt and have the earphone in so others around you aren't listening to what's happening with the radio. Where things differ a little bit with this radio is it comes with two antennas. It's got this, I think, like 17 to 18-inch whip antenna that gives you a little bit better range. And what's unique about this is that, as you'll see in a second, I've got the clear version of the radio, and it gave me a clear version of the antenna. And then along with a little stubby antenna, and this is pretty stiff. It really doesn't move at all. So two antennas, which is kind of cool. Now, before we look at the radio itself, let's take a look at the owner's manual. You can see it's called the Mini 5 series of radios. It's in English. This one is, and it's pretty typical of Baofeng owner's manuals. It's got diagrams with all the parts and buttons labeled. It gives you an idea of how to do some of the basic, analog programming functions and so forth, along with an extended list of all of the menu items as they are grouped in the various submenu. So this is the program channel here that starts here, and it lists all those kind of things. Previously, we've got this set of radio settings menus, and so those are all grouped together, and the explanations are there. So there are two differences that I found with this radio versus the UV5R Mini. And the first one we'll see on the radio chassis itself, and that is the buttons are different. It's got an up and down here with a rocker switch, an A and B and exit here, instead of having the buttons mounted across. I've got a UV5R here that I'll show you side by side in just a second. And then across the top, it's got the antenna connector. It's the male SMA, the on-off volume. We've got three buttons on the side, A and B for push-to-talk, which you can program in over here. We've got the fold-down K1 connector for charge cable programming, or you can plug in that headset that I just showed you. And so let's look at the battery. The belt clip snaps in right here. And I'm deciding I like those little snap-in belt clips. figuring and fumbling around with those little tiny screws can sometimes be a challenge, and so just snapping the belt clip in is something I'm deciding I'm preferring. Here's the charge for the USB-C and a little charge indicator. As you can see here, the battery is, however, bigger. And this is a 2200 milliamp hour, so it's a 16.28, I think it looks like in that small print, watt hours. And it's called the BC5M battery. So it's got the connector to the radio. So let's snap this on and see what it all looks like together. That snapped on very easily, so there was really nothing to it. And so you can see this is a little bit beefier and it's a little bit heavier. Now, I said I had a 5R Mini. Let me take that out so we can see the difference. So here you can see the branding is at the top versus in the middle. Instead of having the VM, scan, and AB switches here, we've got them here, rocker switches instead of up and down here. The menu buttons change places. And it looks like there's a flashlight button here. We'll try that when we turn the radio on. But then when we set these side by side, you can see that the 5 Mini is a little bit thicker because the battery is a little bit bigger. Now, I know the question is going to be asked, can the big battery be used on the small radio? Well, let's give it a shot. So I've got the big battery off the Mini 5. Let's see if we can fit it on. And alas, but no, they are just a little bit bigger. So the batteries aren't, the big battery will not go on the UV5R Mini. Let's see if the little one will go on this one. And again, the cases are just different enough that these two batteries are not interchangeable. Now, let's turn the radio on and do a quick power on tour, as well as a power on comparison with the 5R Mini. So let's turn the radio on and see what we see. We've got the same voice that I'm used to hearing here from these little Baofeng radios, and it looks like the same font. I'll put this side by side with the 5 Mini here in just a second, but we can see we've got the menu, the VM, so it'll go back and forth between the VFO mode. The screen's the same. Here you can see its channel. It says a channel right there. You can see here that's the same font that we have here. It was the same voice when it came on. You can see it says channel there. If we press V/M, it says VFO, so we can swap back and forth, so that hasn't changed at all. We've got the AB, which is one of the big buttons, which will move the control from the lower to the upper and back and forth. And then exit will take you out of the menu system when you're in the menu system. Now, I pointed out the little flashlight. I'm curious to see whether this button's going to turn the light on. And yes, it is. So that's kind of cool. Press it twice, it gives you a flash, and then it turns it off. So that's kind of handy. Those are often found on side keys, which is kind of cool. And then as we go into the menu, then we can see the menu. And now it's time to bring in that other little radio. So here on the frequency mode, you can see we've got the same font. I haven't done any programming in this yet, so we're not seeing anything there. And then we've got the flashlight on this radio, not connected to a programmed key, since I very seldom use flashlights. So this extra key is kind of cool. And so you can see things look about the same. Let's go to menu. We'll go to menu on this radio. And you can see they're the same. Scan, radio, program channel, wireless copy, or the wireless CPS rather. And here the buttons are just a little bit bigger. So if you have big hands or maybe wearing gloves, you can get at that stuff easier. And you can go down here to radio info. And so here we can see that the firmware is different. The new radio is 0.05, the old is 0.27. And the new hardware is 1.7 over here and is 1.0 over here. So there are some differences here in the radio. And you can see there's just a very, very slight difference in the style and the size of the 5 Mini's case, which is why that battery doesn't fit. I've done an in-depth review of the UV5R Mini where I go into the menu, so I'm not going to do that. If you're interested in that, please refer back to that, and I'll leave it on an end screen to this video as well. And so that's the tour. Before we jump into measuring signal purity and power output, if you're finding this video helpful, please click the thumbs up button below and subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel if you haven't already. I've also got affiliate links in the description below. Vendors sometimes provide review devices, but with the Mini 5, I purchased this one myself. Your views and affiliate link purchases make that possible, so thanks very much. Let's put the Mini 5 on the Tiny SA Ultra and see what the signal looks like. It's one of the things I often check on these little radios, and one of the things that was the claim to fame for the UV5R Mini was that it was a clean radio. Some of the budget class Baofeng radios are not, and so it'll be interesting to see whether any of the hardware changes that we saw reflected in that version number had any impact. So I've got my Tiny SA Ultra configured here. We're going to be using the VHF call here at 146520. I don't think you can see that on the display. And so let's press the button here and see what we get. We'll let it run through a couple times as the data points fill in. Okay, it's gone through a couple of times, and you can see that all of the harmonics, or the little tiny spurs that you see, are all 50 or more below the fundamental, and they're all well below that 16.02 dBm line that represents the milliwatt limit on the FCC requirements for radios in this frequency range. So very good. Now let's take a look at power output. I'm going to test the low range in the 2 meter on 146.52 and the upper range up in the 70 centimeter range at 446, the calling frequencies. So on high power, 146.52, here we go. So just a hair over 3 watts, pretty typical for these little radios that advertise as up to 5 watt radios. So that's the 2 meter, now on 70 centimeter on high. And it's about the same, a couple of hundredths below at 2.96, 2.97. So power output is very, very similar to the UV5R Mini, which you'd expect since this is essentially the same radio with just some cosmetic changes. So power output, there you go. In terms of programming, you can use the OLA radio app, the factory CPS for the UV5R Mini, or Chirp, with the UV5R Mini selected as the radio model. Here are a couple of screenshots of the factory CPS and Chirp. Chirp is much more flexible than the factory CPS, so if you haven't tried that, I'd suggest you do. As mentioned earlier, I'll leave a link on the end card and in the description to my UV5R Mini review, where I go into some of those programming options more deeply. As with that model, the Mini 5 is a very nice radio in the budget class. A single pack is currently about $25 and a dual pack is less than $40. There's really not a question about why these little radios are so popular. They're small, they're cute, and they work well. Whether a new or longtime ham, I think you'll want one of these cool little radios as part of your communications toolkit. Join me over here for that UV5R Mini review I mentioned, or my amateur radio playlist. Thanks for watching, and 73.